we'll see you on Monday. Little did we know that on that weekend, on the Saturday, the government would announce that all schools would be closed until further notice. Until this day, we have not seen our students on campus. So that was the last time Pablo and I saw each other, to be honest. So to get a sense of what our team has had to face in terms of distance, to reinvent our culture as a group. So getting back to what the community faces, the dump closed almost immediately. That is the primary source of income for our families. We have other avenues of income for our families, direct, indirect, and tertiary income. But really the key to the economy of that community is the dump. And once it closed, you're shutting off the direct avenue of funds for these families. And they're already living on $2 to $3 a day. So what we're seeing is that in some cases, families have lost upwards of 60% of their income. Next, we're seeing this phenomenon all over the world in varying ways. But the stress, the closure, the lack of the ability to move around and shutting families into homes is increasing the stress and thus the violence. We've seen a real huge explosion in interpersonal violence, whether it's spousal, whether it's child abuse in our families. This has a knock-on effect. It's leading on to other consequences, heightened suicide risk, drug abuse, chemical dependency. But really what this means for us, when our kids do come back, which we're planning to see them in January at present, which could still change, the main tool we have to assess our students' health is interacting with them and observation. And so imagine that primary tool being taken from us during this time. We'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about what we're facing when these kids come back, the triage aspect of being able to assess the health risks of our kids and have the resources in place to address that. But we know we've got a huge mountain to climb when the kids come back. And finally, it's the academics. We haven't seen our kids since March. We're going to end the school year without seeing them again at minimum. That means upwards of 80% of a regular school year. Our students already face huge deficits in terms of development, in terms of performance. So you can imagine what this is going to mean in terms of us redesigning our curricular approach, our teaching. It's all hands on deck now. How do we assess the deficits when they arrive? How do we try to overcome the losses of the last year? And then make up for that in some way with a year that has to be 2 and 1. But to jump right in today, what we really need to talk about, what was the first thing that had to happen in March when our school shut down? As everyone knows about our mission, Pablo and I talk about Maslow's model. You have the most basic needs of an individual, like food, security, and then you can move up that trajectory to the higher order thinking, whether it's reasoning, self-image, education. But first must come health, right? The primary way that we provide nutrition to our kids is by seeing them and having them in our kitchen, in our comedor. That was taken away from us. So we were faced with an immediate challenge. How are we going to get food to our kids and to our families? So that's where we want to jump off first. And I'm actually going to hand it over to Pablo here. And he's a very humble guy, Pablo, but I need to let you know that even before the crisis started, we worked very hard, and Pablo led the charge on this. Our social workers are the front line of defense with our families. They're communicating with them constantly by phone. We're not able to see them like we normally do, so the work is even more accentuated to stay on track, stay on top of what's going on with these families, but to communicate with them, setting up a communication tree with families and using that tree to organize disbursements. But Pablo, why don't you take a moment, man, and talk about what is it that we're doing with our food disbursements and how we evolve that process into a far more enriching nutrition model.
Well, one of the first things or the most challenging things for us were to communicate with our families because since they live in extreme poverty, some of them, they won't have a phone, some of them, or even a smartphone, they don't have it. So it was really difficult to try to communicate with them. So we had to start working on a communication tree, like Trae said, and we started looking for possibilities. to try to get them nearby, or if they didn't have a phone, maybe the neighbor will have a phone, and then we'll get the neighbor phone, we'll call the neighbor, and we'll let them know the information so the neighbor can tell our affiliate to come and to go to this food disbursement activities. At the beginning, they were really difficult because we needed to, well, you know, save social distancing. We needed to check up on temperature. We needed to check up on some symptoms. And the community was not used to that because we weren't used to that either. So the first one were really complicated, were really challenging. But one of the things that I saw on them was that the community, they wanted to work with us. They wanted to make those changes. They were willing to, and they were in the disposition to make the changes that we suggested to them because they trust on us. In my country, in Guatemala, it's really difficult sometimes to trust the health system because the health system, it's not really good. It's not good at all. We have news with the pandemic of some people going to hospitals and waiting at hospitals, sitting on the floor, just waiting for doctors or nurses to go to them to give them medicine. So it's generalized around the country that our health system is not that good, but families will trust us. And that's because we have been working with this community for the last 20 years. Thanks to Safe Passage, thanks to our friends like you, we have been able to gain that trust, and we have been able to consolidate a communication with them in which they can trust the things that we say to them because we show them that we are them, because we show them that we are there for them. So it was difficult at first, but now last week we had our 10th food disbursement of this pandemic, and it's completely different. It's completely different. Families are aware of what they should do. They are aware where should they go. They know what to expect. We know what to expect from them, but it's funny because you don't realize how much community and Safe Passage also as well has grown thanks to this, because it's so challenging that it makes you grow. It makes you it pushes you to a limit. Then you have to grow that. And this type of changing was really exciting to see it in the families. Was really excited to see with our kids as well, because we haven't been able to see them, to watch them, but we know from them through their parents. We know from them, and I think we have all grown from the situation. I want to take the positive part of this, and I think that this part is that the communication, the trust from the community to Safe Passage, it has been so much better. I have been working at Safe Passage for 10 years, and I have never seen the community so committed to our mission as we, as individuals, as staff members, are committed to the community. And saying thanks to all of this.
Exactly. Well said, Pablo. And this is, every day the staff gets up and they get back in the grind, and we're facing challenges that are unprecedented even for our organization. And every single day we talk about the fact we're not alone. We're not alone in this. And so you've got a global aspect to supporting us and our work and the community, and it just drives the team, and it brings us all closer together. And it's happening with the team, and it's also happening with the community, like Pablo was saying. And what's interesting for us is we started out kind of in a form of almost desperation. We got to get food out. But what really happened is we got really good at it over these months. It's like, I would have to say, frankly, it's a well-oiled machine. And adding to that, getting food vouchers out that in addition to the bolsa de víveres, the bags of food and materials, we have cards that the families can use at a local grocery store to add to their food base. In addition to that, we've got cleaning materials, we've got hygienic products. And what's really important about this is we'll never have the resources to provide everything to our families. We're a school first and foremost. That's our mission. But we're a wraparound model. We are an inclusive model. For us, it's about nutrition. It's about healthcare. It's about psychology. It's about social work. It's about what happens outside of the classroom as much as what happens in the classroom, which is why Pablo's team is at the heart of our success during this time, okay? So we are providing that fundamental basis of food security. And it allows for the families to focus on other things, primarily moving on to the second part of this. As a school, many of you know our model. It's called expeditionary learning. As a teacher of 30 years working mostly with at-risk kids, the way to teach kids who are under this form of toxic stress as a life is that neurological development really inhibits executive function, namely the ability to be patient, sit in a classroom. It's all about fight or flight when you live in an environment like that. The way to break through is hands-on learning, dynamic learning, student-centered learning, inquiry-based learning, engaging, authentic learning. That's our model. So imagine when our doors shut, what that means for us as teachers, as educators. So again, out of the gate, we had to come up with a way to transform this dynamic learning curriculum into something that could be handed to our students, to our families. When they came to get their bolsa de vivres and their materials, we created a system of handing out learning packets. Now, yes, when we started off, it was basic repetition work, it was skill building. But now it has evolved into a far more enriching approach. It's projects, using materials in the home with learning products that are turned back in. We're actually to the point now where we're using smartphone technology for teachers to create instructional videos. We've created a teacher ambassador system where teachers can actually interact with the families to close that learning loop, which is so important. Incredibly important that we were able to evolve that. And the other thing about distance learning is that for us, we're still adhering to ministry requirement. We are still accommodating ministry demands in terms of proving that our kids are learning, making sure that these kids are going to get credit for the year. Is it ideal? No. But I think you'd be very proud of how we've been able to reinvent ourselves in real time, okay, on the learning side of things. Really important, again, back to Pablo and the team, jumped right in and had to design protocols. Health protocols, best practices. And frankly, of the organizations that I'm aware of, and I'm in contact with a lot of directors of other organizations, I would put our approach up against any of them in terms of just the exquisite approach to the health of our staff and the health of our families when they come in. Everything from the PPP to distancing. When these families come in to pick up their food, our staff, it is our commitment that they remain safe. And Pablo, I mean, again, I hope you'd agree that it has been one of our greatest achievements so far, that we've been able to maintain that. And Pablo, before we move on, take a moment to talk about what's going on with the actual best practices in the homes themselves. This is actually a little noticed benefit of us being able to educate our families in terms of how to keep themselves healthy.
Yes, so we have been working with the families also to keep the best practices at home. But one of the first challenge was the communication, as we were saying before. But with this communication tree, and we also have developed a telemedicine program. We developed also a educational Facebook page for them. So now we get in touch with them. We send them special information about COVID. We send them special information about best practices. And we are doing the same with staff. So we are trying to keep them healthy. We're trying to keep them with best practices as much as we can. We are sending material home. We are constantly in communication with them, asking for their health, how they are. And if they get sick, then we get in touch with our pediatrician with our telemedicine program. But not also telemedicine is important for us, but also mental health. It's really important for us. So we develop also a telepsychology program that it's working out. So this all happened thanks to this, and this have all teach us so much about the community, because they have also respond to this and see them responding to us as well. It has been one of the most amazing experience, a life experience to me. But we are trying to do our job as good as we can, and then try to keep doing what we are here for them. The telemedicine program was, I think it's a huge success for us. We got in touch with a pediatrician. Our pediatrician Also, we get in touch with a local pharmacy. Local pharmacy will accept us a picture of a medical. I forgot the word. A prescription. I
Yes.
think that's word. So we can send them an image of the prescription. They will send us the medicine, and we don't get to be in touch with no one. We respect social distancing. We show them, we show the community how it's done by us modeling that, and they imitate us because they trust us, because they believe in us, and they know that we are doing the best for them. So it has been interesting how this it's working, but I just don't want to brag, that much. But actually, it's something that it has been really turned out to a positive thing, because we pushed ourselves and we pushed the community as well. We pushed our affiliates, we pushed our students, and now we can see the results. When Trae was talking about those mini projects, something that you are not capable to see in the pictures, or maybe you are, it's if you could see how proud parents are when they turn out the projects of their kids. It's amazing to see them in their faces. And we were there to see that. This situation pushed us to the limits, and then they respond to that, and now they feel proud about this. They feel that they have grown, and they just enter their projects, or they give their projects, and they feel so good about that. And this challenge has taken so much of the community that we are really proud to present everything that we're doing, because we feel like it's working. We know that it's working, and they, most importantly, they know that it's working. So it's been amazing.
Fantastic. And just to close out today, and we can go to some questions. What's next, right? So we are planning to open up again in January. We're in the at this moment. I've mentioned a bit of this, so we can kind of briefly just repeat that it's about logistics, it's about health. When the kids come back, how do we get kids on campus, staff on campus and off campus safe? Number one. That means budgets. That means more materials, cleaning materials. It means more staff, social distancing. It means masks. It means a whole host of budgetary elements in planning around opening that would have been unthinkable just 8 months ago. I already talked about academics. We are coming out of this a different school than we went in. One thing I need to let you know, a huge investment area for us, an area of growth, is that we don't have the capability to have a basic virtual learning model. Our kids do not have internet generally. We certainly can't be handing out computers in our community. We would lose a number of them due to theft, but also due to security issues that come with having devices like that. So we have to solve the distance learning model in a very different way. And we're working on that. But it's going to require a lot of resources and a lot of change for us in the coming months. Because we can't be sure when the kids come back in January that we won't have to close again. And we've learned so much about how to deliver our curriculum in a blended learning model, face-to-face, hopefully, but also the distance aspect as well. And finally, it's really important to emphasize this again. When our kids return, whether it's their physical health, whether it's their teeth, whether it's their psychological health, whether it's been incidents of abuse, we have got a long road to reincorporating those kids back into our community and taking care of their needs. That's psychology, that's social work. It's our doctor. We have a lot of partnerships we're going to have to be leaning on to make sure that we're assessing the kids' disease health, and we've got the resources in place to make sure that we can meet those needs as well. I will stop there and hand it back over. And if you guys have any questions, there's a lot that we couldn't cover in a brief amount of time, but I hope that was an interesting. And by the way, Pablo and I are on standby. If anybody is interested in more information, just ask Steve, and he'll tell you. We'll talk all day, Pablo and me. So please make sure that you reach out if we didn't cover something that you want in more depth. But thank you very much.
it's encouraging to hear the optimism in your voice. It really speaks to the groundwork that you've laid over the past so many years, and that the community and the children and the families have responded so well, really in many ways, to the most difficult situation. You mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It seems like you've gotten the community up a few notches, and they recognize the situation for what it is. They recognize the work you've done, so the amount of backsliding wasn't as much as maybe it could have been if you didn't have such great systems in place. And I'm hopeful that despite the loss of the academic year, that you will actually accelerate the learning when you are able to meet again, because I think from the sound of everything, and even the little bit I know in the pictures, that you've laid a great groundwork for the people, the community, and like Pablo was saying, the trust is there. So the relationship is there, and they're willing to do what you say, and they know that that you listen to them and meet the needs of the community. It's so impressive to see, really. So with that, that's more of a comment than a question. Does anyone
Thank you.
have a question? Steve? Sure, come right up. It's easiest.
Over the past few years, you know, I've been very passionate about the Safe Passage program. And over the past few years, I do presentations and people give me $20, $50. When they give you cash in my pocket, I put it into a little account, and over the past few years, I've got about $800 accrued in that account. And I've also got some money, and Don Gustafson's been very gracious about holding on to some cash for me. We've got about $2,500 that Don just gave to me yesterday. And I have an envelope in my office with a little over $3,500 that I want to send to Safe Passage. But long and short of it is they need about $20,000 to start the January year. Not because they don't have money, it's because just in compliance with this COVID stuff. So if anybody would like to donate, a lot of little checks go a long way. We've got Rotary clubs in North Carolina, the Green Mountain Rotary Club in North Carolina is contributing money. There's Rotary clubs in Maine, Rotary clubs all around the United States and Canada. We're going to try to make this work. So anything you can do, a lot of small checks doesn't mean a lot of small checks go a long way. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Any questions? Oh, Lois.
Well, I've been a proud sponsor of Safe Passage for I don't know how many years. Through two little girls, they're the cutest in the system, according to Steve Serta. I think they've gone a foster of the system because they always look beautiful. And I'm proud to see what they're doing to adapt in these troubling times. And I'm just proud to be part of it. And I certainly am going to send a check to Steve for more, because obviously my $50 a month is not enough. Trae, I'm working on it. But I think that's important that we know that every penny we give is going to be done properly, and it's going to be not wasted. And that's what's critical about this project. So I do encourage everyone, we can't change the world, but we can certainly help these children. And I wish everybody would support this project.
Thank you, Lois.
Are there any questions for Trae or Safe Passage? Well, Trae and Pablo, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and thank you for all the work you do. Is there any more business to come before the club? Hearing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Good night.